Just a reminder, this is Alice Lagnado at the Voice of Russia in London. I'm joined by Polina, Boiko and Dmitry Linnik, and we're talking to Dmitry Bykov. Dmitry, you said that Russian reality is governed by magical and pagan roots. Could you unravel this thought a bit for me?
Well, pagan because not Christian. That's very simple. I think Christianity in Russia was also official. The people's belief was also sectant, was also self-ruling, self-governing, and didn't depend on official church. You know, Alexander Etkin, for example, a brilliant scientist living now in Cambridge, described this type of people's belief very far from official church. It was a strange mixture of Christianity, paganism, magism, and so on. Christianity never was adopted in Russia, I should say. Maybe because officials were preventing it, maybe because some rudiments of paganism were too strong, maybe because we were forced to take Christianity. Christianity was taken only by the thinking part of society, by religious philosophers, and so on. I think that Russia is pressed by official church, not led by official church, not understood by it. I think that official church in Russia doesn't participate in its real life at all. And so our life is pagan. But I hope that Christianity will be spread and will be understood by a majority, because there is nothing better in the world, and we Russians always prefer the better.
There's some well-known adage that, a person that isn't a liberal in his young age has no heart.
Yes, and who is not conservative and he's old, yes,
yeah.
he doesn't have brains.
Where on that line are you?
Well, I hope I don't have neither heart nor brains, because now in my not old but middle years I'm a liberal, and maybe I become more and more liberal, and in my youth I was conservative. Such a horrible monster without heart and brains, but maybe with some sense of reality, I should say.
How do you explain that? I mean, the opposite movement.
It's really very simple to explain, I should say, because I always was a kind of nonconformist, maybe not because of my ideas, but just because of my character, because of my person, and so on. I always liked to be lonesome and maybe to be criticized. I like to be alone against the crowd. Maybe that's my strange intellectual perversion. And so in the 90s, when liberalism was a kind of state ideology of Russia, I was very far from it. I was an enemy of it. And now, when I tried conservatism for 10 years, now I am a good liberal, and maybe my practice will make me not even liberal, but libertarian, which I'm afraid of.
So you're saying you sort of like to swim against the stream, as it were?
Yes, let's try.
Isn't it that the stream is currently flowing? Well, there's a lot of anti-Kremlin, anti-Putin sentiment about, and definitely on the internet it's probably a majority, and you are swimming with that, not against that.
Well, you see, we can't say about majority. Nowadays situation in Russia is unpredictable and maybe unexplainable for foreigner, because foreigner knows very well the Russian historical circle, this change of revolution and tyranny, and he's ready that now the crowd will be against Kremlin. Nothing of this kind. Now we see the change of the quality in Russian population. I can hope, deep in my heart, that we see the end of this historical circle, which was repeating itself for 7 times from Grozny. Because
from Ivan the Terrible.
Yeah, from Ivan the Terrible. I think this circle was repeating itself because the huge amount of people was just giving its natural political rights to any ruling minority. And these uneducated and dark people were doing their own deeds, were minding their own business. Maybe they were not interested in politics. They decided to get rid of it somehow. There was no public politics in Russia, generally, never. They were surviving, they were living by their own lives, and Russian political life was a theater for them, was something separated from them forever. Now we see the new quality of these political spectators. They want to be the participants of play. Maybe internet made it. Maybe Soviet power in its recent years managed to educate majority, because you know that total education, total middle education was organized in Russia only under the communist power, because before it 90% of population couldn't read or write. So now this new population tries to begin to read, think, vote, and so on. I'm sure now that the time of majorities is over. Now we go into the time of real thinking, real struggle, real election, and it's quite unpredictable.
You've had your experience of life in the Soviet Union. Is there a lot of things that you miss about the Soviet Union?
Well, you see, now I am just organizing the new magazine in Russia, which would be called the Soviet Union. You know, there was such a magazine in the 70s. It was made for foreigners. It was just an advertisement of Soviet way of life. I'm quite sure that Soviet life, Soviet Union, was a huge progress for Russia. Progress can't be soft, and it was cruel. But it was progress. It was better than repetition of the same historical stages. The Soviet Union was practically destroyed by Stalin in the end of 30s. It was the so-called Russian revenge. And all the international program of Soviet Union, all the educational and progressive program of Soviet Union was totally destroyed by classical Asian tyranny. But we should understand what it was in 20s, in the beginning of 30s. And by the way, we should understand 60s, because 60s, I think, was the best period in Russian history at all. So some historians, some sociologists, some writers are being my staff, and we are issuing the first number maybe in August. And I'm sure that now we must only know what it was objectively, for example, as about antique culture, as about ancient Greece. And I think this project will answer most questions about Soviet history.
You said you don't give interviews to foreign journalists. Is that because they won't understand?
First of all, I'll say some horrible words about them. You know, I don't know how to translate, but there are some birds which prefer only bloody food. Sтервятники in Russian.
Vultures?
Maybe something like this.
Vultures,
yes. They are looking at us with great curiosity. They are asking about our life, but I know that their curiosity is a kind of a secret wish. For example, it would be very nice if all of us would be destroyed or dead, because it would be a good topic for their report, and they could get Pulitzer Prize for this report, and getting this Pulitzer Prize, they could thank their parents and cry publicly. I hate this type of political journalist, I'm sorry. I hate this ferocity and this, I don't know how to translate it, but there was a good and very rarely used word now. I think hypocrisy, or hypocrisy, yes. I never meet it in nowadays praise, but it's typical hypocrisy, because they don't wish our victory.
But a lot of your fellow political activists do talk to foreign journalists.
Well, that's their choice. Maybe they think it will help. I know it won't help anyhow, because West doesn't want to help us. I understand it very well, and I praise West for it, because we should do it ourselves. I understand very well also that West prefers stable Russia, and stable Russia is Putin's Russia. Putin is supported by most of European leaders who never say a single true word about freedom, because freedom is not a popular value now. Gas is a popular value, dollar is a popular value, yes, problem with euro and so on are much more important for European society. But if they don't help us, let them be aside, let them not interfere our struggle, because when they are beginning their questions, I see that I personally, with my thoughts, with my books, with my ideas, is not interesting for them at all. But if I, for example, I hope it won't happen, but if I would be damaged by some soldier, I would be a good topic for them.
What about Russian journalists? Do you think they're better?
They're much better, most of them, because, Russian journalists have a good school of participating Russian political life and Ukrainian political life and so on in 90s. Maybe the best features of Russian journalists are solidarity, humanism, and the most important thing, we don't have Pulitzer Prize. So when we're writing about something, we're just risking without any profit. Journalist is a dangerous and not well-paid profession in Russia.
Well, it's not that well paid and it's not that safe in Britain either, I have to tell you.
I hope.
We've just had our Sunday Times reporter killed in Syria.
Yes, I hope. And I'm not meaning all journalists at all, In Britain, I have many friends in journalism. But when they begin to talk about Russian situation, they show such abysses of ignorance that it's really... Maybe it can be compared only with my abysses of ignorance in British history.
On a wider scale, do you believe in Russia-West cooperation?
I'm quite sure that in nearest 50 years, when Russia will overcome its crisis and become the symbol of freedom, when USA will come through its crises and will become also the symbol of free economy, of bravery, of intellectual force and so on. At this time, we'll be friends and partners, and we together will struggle against radical Islam or something fanatism, or maybe some scientific problems, and we'll face the new challenges. But now, when we are just solving our personal problems, I think it's a kind of friendship between two very ill persons, when every of them is just aware only on his own business. And they can't be friends just because they don't understand problems of each other.
That was the poet and journalist Dmitry Bykov talking to me, Alice Lagnado, Polina Boiko and Dmitry Linnik for the Voice of Russia in London. Stay with us.